Before history was written, before kingdoms rose and fell, before the great cities of the Indus, there was a time shrouded in mystery. A time when this land was still finding its shape, when our ancestors walked alongside giants, when fire was a new invention and stone was the only weapon. This is the untold story of prehistoric India, from drifting continents to the first farmers, from humble villages to mighty cities, and from forgotten caves to the birth of civilization. Over the next 3 episodes, we will journey across hundreds of thousands of years, exploring how a wilderness became the cradle of one of the world's oldest cultures. Stay with us till the very end, because each part reveals clues that connect, and in the final moments, you'll see how all of prehistory fits together into the India we know today. So, get ready, the story begins now. Part 1, the dawn of prehistoric India. Before there were kingdoms, before the Vedas were sown, before the bricks of Harappa touched the earth, there was a land untouched by human memory, a land where colossal mountains were still rising, where rivers carved their first paths, and where the ancestors of humankind would one day leave their mark. This is the story of prehistoric India, a journey to the very beginning of our civilization. Chapter 1, the birth of a continent. Our story begins, not with humans, but with the very land beneath our feet. Nearly 120 million years ago, India was not where it is today. It was part of a giant supercontinent called Gondwana, drifting far to the south. Over millions of years, this massive plate moved northwards faster than any other continental plate in Earth's history. Eventually, around 50 million years ago, it collided with the Eurasian plate, a collision so powerful it gave birth to the Himalayas. From that moment, the geography of India began shaping the destiny of every life form that would live here. The towering mountains trap the monsoon winds, feeding the mighty rivers, the Ganga, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, lifelines of the land to come. Chapter 2, the first humans arrived. Fast forward to roughly 2 million years ago. Our earliest ancestors, not yet modern humans, set foot on this subcontinent. They were hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons, armed only with stones they shaped into tools. Archaeologists have found hand axes, cleavers, and choppers in the Narmada Valley in Tamil Nadu's Adirampakkam and along ancient riverbeds. These crude tools belong to the lower Paleolithic age. One of the most intriguing finds was the partial skull of a hominin in the Narmada Valley, believed to be around 250,000 years old. Nicknamed Narmada Man, it remains one of the oldest human fossils in India. Life then was simple and dangerous. Early humans shared the land with giant elephants, hippos, and even prehistoric big cats. Survival meant constant movement, chasing game, gathering wild fruits, and finding shelter when the rains came. Chapter 3, the art of survival. As centuries passed, humans learned to adapt. They followed animal migrations, discovered edible plants, and learned the power of fire. This was not just about food. Fire brought warmth, safety from predators, and a place for communities to gather. But survival was still uncertain. A bad hunting season, a flood, or a prolonged drought could wipe out entire groups. It was in these struggles that early humans began developing cooperation, the first sparks of society. Chapter 4, the world painted in stone. In the heart of modern-day Madhya Pradesh lies a treasure that bridges the gap between their world and ours, the Bhimbetka rock shelters. Here, on walls of sandstone, people painted scenes from their lives thousands of years ago. You can still see them today. Hunters with bows chasing deer, groups dancing in celebration. Even handprints that whisper across time, saying, "We were here." Some of these paintings are over 10,000 years old, dating to the Mesolithic period. They were not just decoration, they were communication, storytelling, and perhaps even ritual magic, meant to ensure a successful hunt or to honor the spirits of nature. Chapter 5, the Mesolithic transition. By around 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age was ending. The climate grew warmer, forests spread, and rivers swelled with life. Humans began crafting microliths, small, finely worked stone blades that could be fitted into wooden or bone handles to make arrows, spears, and sickles. They started fishing, gathering wild grains, and living in camps for longer periods. Dogs were domesticated not only as hunting companions, but as protectors and friends. Chapter 6, the seeds of change. This gradual shift in lifestyle set the stage for the most revolutionary chapter in human history, the Neolithic Revolution. In sites like Mehrgarh in what is now Pakistan, communities began farming wheat and barley around 7000 BCE. They built mud brick houses, stored food, and domesticated cattle, goats, and sheep. No longer bound to the endless search for food, they could settle in one place, and with that stability came population growth, new ideas, and new skills. From drifting continents to the first sparks of civilization, this was the dawn of prehistoric India. The story has only just begun, and in part 2, we'll see how these early communities transformed into the first farmers, artisans, and traders, planting the seeds for the civilizations yet to rise. Part 2, from hunters to farmers. By the end of the last ice age, the land we now call India had transformed. Forests spread, rivers deepened, and the air grew warmer. This was the stage for humanity's greatest shift, from a life of constant wandering to a life rooted in the soil. Chapter 1, the Mesolithic way of life. The Mesolithic people, between 12,000 and 8,000 years ago, were masters of adaptation. They hunted antelope and wild boar, gathered fruits, nuts, and honey, and fished in the swelling rivers. Their tools were smaller and sharper than those of the Paleolithic age. Microliths, tiny stone blades, could be set into wooden or bone shafts to create arrows, sickles, and spears. These tools meant more efficient hunting and the ability to process plants for food. In some regions, dogs became faithful companions, helping in hunts and guarding camps. This bond between humans and animals would soon evolve into something far greater. Chapter 2, the first steps toward farming. Over generations, people noticed something remarkable. Seeds left near camp often sprouted into new plants. This simple observation changed everything. Around 7000 BCE, in the fertile plains of the Bolan Pass, at a site known today as Mehrgarh, communities began planting wheat and barley. They herded goats, sheep, and cattle. For the first time, humans could control their food supply. Farming meant they no longer had to follow herds or search endlessly for wild grains. They could stay in one place, and in staying, they began to build. Chapter 3, life in the first villages. The people of Mehrgarh built mud brick homes, often with flat roofs where they could dry crops. They dug pits to store grain, crafted simple pottery, and wove baskets. Trade began to emerge. Seashells from distant coasts, turquoise from far-off mines, beads of cornelian and lapis lazuli. Villages became centers of cooperation. Farming required planning, sowing and harvesting at the right times, protecting crops from pests, and storing food for the lean months. This was the beginning of a more structured society. Chapter 4, the rise of pottery. With farming came surplus food, and with surplus came the need to store it. Around 6000 BCE, pottery began to appear, first hand-molded, then shaped on slow-turning wheels. These clay vessels kept grain dry and safe from pests, but pottery was more than practical. Early designs were painted with simple patterns, lines, dots, and geometric shapes. It was art and a sign of identity for each community. Chapter 5, spiritual life of the early farmers. Farming societies began to see the land as a living force, one that gave and took life. Small clay figurines of women, found at Mehrgarh and other sites, are believed to represent a mother goddess, a symbol of fertility and abundance. People may have prayed for good harvests, for rain, and for protection from floods and droughts. Nature itself, the sun, the moon, the rivers, became sacred. Chapter 6, the Chalcolithic Age, the Age of Copper. By around 3000 BCE, a new material entered human life, copper. The Chalcolithic Age, or Copper Age, marked the first use of metal tools alongside stone. Copper axes, chisels, and fishing hooks made work faster and more efficient. Communities like those in Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and central India began to flourish. They traded copper, beads, and pottery across long distances. Chapter 7 Social Change and Cultural Growth. With farming and trade came new social structures. Some people specialized in making tools, others in pottery or weaving. Burial sites from this period reveal differences in wealth. Some graves filled with ornaments, others with only basic items. These were the first signs of social hierarchy. It was no longer just about survival, it was about status, identity, and legacy. Chapter 8 The Legacy of Early Farming Society. By the end of this period, the seeds, both literal and cultural, had been planted for something greater. Villages were growing larger, trade routes were expanding. Religious symbols, farming techniques, and craft traditions were spreading from one community to another. From these early farmers and copper workers would rise the first cities of the Indus Valley civilization, and with them the true dawn of urban life in India. From the hunters of the Mesolithic to the farmers of the Neolithic and the coppersmiths of the Chalcolithic. This was the age when humanity took control of its destiny, but the journey was far from over. In part 3, we will witness the rise of one of the world's greatest ancient civilizations, and the mysterious fall that still puzzles historians today. Part 3, the first steps towards civilization by the dawn of the 3rd millennium BCE. The land had changed forever. The people of prehistoric India were no longer just hunters, gatherers, or farmers. They were builders, traders, and visionaries standing on the threshold of the first great cities. This was the final chapter before history began to write itself. Chapter 1 Proto-urban settlements between 3300 and 2600 BCE. Farming villages began to expand into something new, proto-urban settlements. Sites like Khatiji in present-day Pakistan and Kalibangan in Rajasthan reveal streets laid out in rough grids, fortified walls, and public wells. These were no longer temporary gatherings. They were permanent communities designed with purpose. Here, farmers, craftsmen, and traders lived side by side. Surplus grain was stored in communal granaries. Goods like beads, pottery, and copper tools were made in specialized workshops. Chapter 2, Trade and Cultural Connections of Trade, was the lifeblood of these early towns. The rivers acted as highways, linking distant communities. From the forests came timber and honey. From the hills came copper, semi-precious stones, and gold dust. And from faraway coasts, seashells and pearls. There is evidence that these people traded not just within the subcontinent, but as far as Mesopotamia in the west. The seeds of globalization had already been sown. Chapter 3, the Harappan Dawn. By around 2600 BCE, these proto-urban centers gave rise to the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's 3 great ancient civilizations, alongside Egypt and Mesopotamia. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were marvels of planning. Straight streets intersected at right angles. Massive brick houses stood beside public baths and drainage systems more advanced than many found thousands of years later. Every brick was the same size, every weight measure standardized. This was not random growth, it was organized, deliberate, and deeply interconnected. Chapter 4, a culture without kings. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, there is no clear evidence of kings or palaces in the Harappan world. No massive statues proclaiming a ruler's power. Instead, power may have been shared among merchants, elders, and community leaders. The famous Harappan seals, carved with animals and mysterious symbols, may have been used for trade, marking ownership and origin. The script remains undeciphered, leaving much of their story untold. Chapter 5, Spiritual Life and Beliefs. Archaeological finds suggest a rich spiritual life. Clay figurines of women, possibly fertility goddesses, echo the mother goddess of earlier farming cultures. The bull, strong and enduring, appears often, perhaps a symbol of prosperity. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro hints at ritual purification, a tradition that still echoes in modern India's sacred river baths. Chapter 6, Everyday Life in the Indus cities. In the bustling streets, merchants displayed pottery painted with geometric designs. Bead makers shaped carnelian shell and lapis into jewelry traded across continents. Children played with clay toys, miniature carts, animals, and spinning tops. Life revolved around the marketplace, the workshop, and the home. Water from public wells, food from the fields, and a sense of shared community kept these cities thriving. Chapter 7. The Mysterious Decline. Around 1900 BCE, the great cities began to change. Trade networks weakened, streets grew narrower, buildings less uniform. Some believe climate change played a role. The mighty Saraswati River may have dried, and the Indus floods may have grown unpredictable. Others suggest shifts in trade routes, resource shortages, or even disease. By 1500 BCE, the great hairpan cities had faded, leaving only scattered villages and ruins. Chapter 8. The Legacy of Prehistory. Though the cities fell, their influence lived on. Techniques in farming, craftwork, and urban planning were passed down. Religious symbols, the sacred bull, the goddess figure, ritual bathing, found echoes in later Indian traditions. Prehistoric India had laid the foundations: agriculture, trade, craft, social organization for everything that would follow, from drifting continents to bustling cities, from stone tools to copper, and from rock paintings to undeciphered scripts. The story of prehistoric India is not just the story of a land. It is the story of us, of humanity's endless quest to adapt, create, and endure. The echoes of this ancient dawn still whisper in the rivers, the mountains, and the soil beneath our feet, waiting for those who choose to listen, but slow. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe our channel Ancient Timeline. Thanks for watching.